I have so many conversations with myself that I don't usually feel confident having in social setups. But I am pretty sure I am not alone. Join me on this podcast as I have these conversations unapologetically loud. My name is June Robinson, and welcome to another episode of Cut the Monologue. Hello, hi, hello to you, my lovely listener, and a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening to you, depending on whatever time you're listening. The time on my end is exactly 6:45 a.m. and so I'm going to tell myself good morning. So I'm really excited about this week's episode. Sorry, sometimes I forget that this is not a weekly podcast, but rather an occasional podcast. So I would want to welcome you to this episode, and I am super excited about this. I'm pretty sure I have said that I'm excited about a podcast episode a couple of episodes back, but that is majorly because I resonate with a lot of the episodes that I do, so that makes me excited whenever I get to talk about them. And I am also excited about this particular one because I feel like it's something that a lot of you who are listening to me will be able to resonate with. And yeah, so welcome to this episode of the podcast. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about stereotypes, breaking stereotypes. That is, we are going to be looking at understanding stereotypes, challenging the stereotypes that exist, and overcoming the stereotypes. And of course, before we even begin on anything, discussing the points and giving examples and all that, I want us to look at what are stereotypes, what leads to the development of stereotypes, how do they come to being, how do they just come out of nowhere. They exist, and you find that masses are attaching themselves to it, or masses are attached to these stereotypes. So stereotypes are, just by the Google definition, stereotypes are simplified and widely held beliefs or generalizations about a particular group of people. So these beliefs, they often simplify the characteristics of individual within that group, ignoring individual differences. Stereotypes can be based on various factors such as race, gender, ethnicity, religion, or social class. And while some stereotypes may have a kernel of truth, they often lead to unfair assumptions, biases, and can contribute to discrimination. It is therefore important to recognize and challenge stereotypes in order to promote a more accurate and equitable understanding of diverse individuals and groups. So, based on, I feel like the definition is clear, cut to the chase, and especially now, I feel like this topic is important because for many people who I interact with on like deep conversation level, I feel like we are in our awakening era where we are trying to unpack a lot of the things that we picked up, a lot of the things that we learned, and a lot of the things that were instilled in us. We are trying to unpack them, and we are trying to make sense of all of these things that we have come across in our existence, in our period of existence. And that's one of the reasons why at the beginning I said I am super excited about this, because while you are in your period of awakening, you realize that you attached yourself to certain stereotypes that exist, okay? Or people attached you to a stereotype that exists. And now that you're in your awakening era, you're like, no, I am my own individual. I do not want to be judged based on masses. I want to be judged based on my own individual self and how how I present myself. And this is completely opposite of stereotypes, because stereotypes, they place you in a box, they place you in a group, they place you in a mass. And we are in this era, we're in this era of unpacking it, and we need to move with the times. And as per the definition, it goes further ahead and says, the stereotypes, they can exist based on various factors such as race, gender, ethnicity, religion, or social class. Back when I was in my campus days, I remember I would hear people say like, "Oh, I wouldn't like." okay, basically it was men, and they would generally say, I would never marry a college girl because, a college girl is just, they are exposed to, this party lifestyle and this um slay queen type of lifestyle, for the lack of a better word. So I remember at one point I was in a relationship, I was dating this guy, and he hadn't gone to university. He had basically just gone to college and, etc., etc. And to some extent, the life, the experience, let me use that word, the experience that students go through in college and in university are two different things. Okay. So when he got up with me and he was dating me, at certain points in our dating period, he would say things like, I never thought that I would meet someone as good as you who has gone to university. And the first time he told me, I asked him, why would you say that? What is it about me going to university that would make me different? And he'd say, oh, there was this thing that we used to say about university girls and how they love party life and how, you cannot have them for a girlfriend. They're simply just people who you are there with for, the good time, and it could be a one night stand, but it's not like something that you consider dating. So to say, we broke up anyway. But also, our breakup was not because I went to university, but for other reasons, just to be clear. But it's that, do you see that generalization? And when he told me that, I was like, okay, so how many of people who have the same thought as you, who I meet, who immediately cancel me because I simply say I went to university, and just by me saying that, okay, I am a female, I went to university for 4 years, I had my fun and everything, and they pause on getting to know me simply out of the fact that I went to university. That is a stereotype. And stereotypes hurt. In Kenya, because I see my statistics and I see that I have listeners who are from outside of Kenya, who are from outside of Africa. We have different ethnic groups, okay? And a majority of these stereotypes are usually classified based on the ethnic group that someone comes from, or so to say, tribes. Okay, so we have, okay, I will mention just some of the overpopularized tribes that we have in the country, and those are like Luos. There's a certain stereotype about Luo women and Luo men, and while they may, contain some level of truth, some kernel of truth, a majority of them are lies, and they force you to belong to this box that you do not want. Okay, so that is just a rough definition of that. So when we look at what is the importance of us having this discussion, why is it important for us to have this discussion right now, not tomorrow, not the day after tomorrow, not 5 hours from now, but why is it important for us to have this conversation about stereotypes right now? Awareness and understanding. Open discussions about stereotypes increase awareness and promote a better understanding of the biases that exist. By having this conversation that, especially in the tribal stereotypes that exist in the country, where certain tribes believe that tribe B has these cultural practices, and having these conversations, they promote awareness and they promote a better understanding of the biases that exist. For example, I have friends who belong to the Kikuyu tribe, okay? And when we were getting to know each other, they would say that you're like, how we know you guys from our side is that you guys are so much into culture. You guys do not break your culture for anything. And some of the cultural stereotypes that have been associated with my tribe, me being a Luo girl, me being a Luo, is number one, your husband has to, the men, they have to practice wife inheritance. Okay. Number two, um, the once someone dies, you have to sleep with them or something along those lines. And no, of course they're not true. They're not. You do not have to carry out wife inheritance. You do not have to do that. I do not know why that exists. in the past life, maybe, but those were cultural practices and they no longer exist. So by me just being their friend and us having this, conversation, of course, at that point, they were light conversations, etc., etc. But by us having those such conversations, they were able to get a clear picture of what actually exists on our end as Luos. And I also was able to have some light shed on the things that I believed they do as, as part of the Kikuyu community. So moving on to the next point, it's combating prejudice and discrimination. Stereotypes can lead to prejudice and discrimination, perpetuating social inequalities. So, by addressing and challenging stereotypes, individuals in society can work towards dismantling discriminatory attitudes and behaviors. And this is so true because when the whole aspect of being stereotyped is being placed in a box, once you're placed in a box, every factor that is against you is just magnified. Okay. So by having these conversations, we are able to break this. We are able to combat the prejudice that comes with it. We are able to combat the discrimination that comes with it. Promoting inclusivity. Honest conversations about stereotypes, they can help to create a more inclusive and accepting society. So stereotypes, they carry with them a lot of harm. And by addressing these stereotypes, it can help to encourage people to embrace diversity and also to appreciate individual differences. As I said, stereotypes place you in a box. And by having this conversations about stereotypes openly, we are able to shine in our individuality. We are able to shine in our uniqueness and have people accept us for who we are rather than place us in a box and discriminate on us and carry prejudice on us. Educational opportunities. Discussing stereotypes provides educational opportunities to correct misinformation and share accurate information. This can contribute to a more informed and enlightened society. Like the example that I used about me and my friends, by us having that discussion and me sharing with them my truth as a Luo and them sharing their truth as Cukes, I was able to learn, at least for me, I can speak for myself. I was able to learn something just from having that discussion with them. It helps to build bridges because the existence of stereotypes, it causes a lot of division, especially in a scenario where it's a negative type of stereotype. And it may make people feel like, no, I do not want to associate myself with this group or with this individual because I feel like this individual is like this, and this. And that conclusion is brought about by the stereotype. So when you are having this discussion about stereotypes, we are able to break the division that occurs and create togetherness, engage other people. Media literacy. Stereotypes are often perpetuated through media, and we are going to have a deeper, in-depth discussion about the role of media in perpetuating stereotypes. Personal growth. Like I said, we are in this growth era, unpacking era. So having conversations about stereotypes, it accelerates the journey of, personal growth. Because now when you meet an individual, you're able to have a conversation with this person based on who they are, how they present themselves, and not where they come from or which ethnic group they belong to or what's their social class or, etc., etc. One of the questions that I kept asking myself as I was thinking about this podcast, this episode, and how I was planning the episode plan is, how are stereotypes formed? How do they develop? And I had to look it up and I had to do my research and understand it. And stereotypes develop through a combination of social, cognitive, and cultural processes. And some of these key factors that contribute to the development of stereotypes are categorization. As human beings, we have a natural tendency to categorize information in order to make sense of the world. Okay. This categorization, it extends to people where individuals are grouped based on observable characteristics such as race, gender, age, or ethnicity. In order for us to make sense of why someone is behaving the way they are, we immediately start looking at, okay, let's, if that person maybe belongs to a particular ethnic group, and I am using ethnic groups slash tribal groups mainly because it is the most common factor. For instance, if this lady is a Kalenjin and you want to make sense of their behavior, you pick up maybe 3, 4, 10 Kalenjins that you know, and once you see that they have a similar behavior, you immediately categorize Lady A into this category of other Kalenjin ladies who you found, so as to help make sense of their behavior instead of working towards knowing why this lady is behaving as she is as an individual. Okay, so categorization is one of the key factors. Cultural and social influence is another factor, whereby we have cultural norms, values, and social influences. They play a role in shaping stereotypes. Media, family, peers, and other social institutions contribute to the transmission of stereotypes through repeated exposure and reinforcement. Like the instance where at the beginning I said, my friends, they believed that among the Luo, there's always the aspect of wife inheritance. And as I said, stereotypes, they contain some kernel of truth, and this is why. Among the Luo community, for instance, wife inheritance existed back in the days, like back in the days. And one of the factors that led to the development of wife inheritance was because at the end of the day, in the Luo community, as a woman, once you're married and your dowry has already been paid, you're not expected to go back home, back to your maiden home. You're not expected to go back there. So the whole concept of wife inheritance, it was brought about mainly to have the woman of the deceased, the wife of the deceased, to remain as part of the community, okay, so that she doesn't feel left out, so that the children still feel like part of the community. That is one instance where wife inheritance existed. The other instance was brought about in this scenario. As a wife to the deceased already paid for your bride price. We had instances where bride price could be paid even while the woman was young, okay? So bride price has been paid. And by the time this woman is of a mature age that she can now come and live with a husband, and this is back in the days where there wasn't really much, there wasn't technology, there wasn't education, there wasn't formal type of education, at least to say that. This woman, when now she's of a mature age to come and start her own family, maybe something goes wrong and the to-be husband dies. Traditional customs did not allow for the bride price to be brought back, because who is it being brought back to? The person who took it is no longer in existence. So who is it being brought back to? So you would find that in these situations, the brother of the deceased would take this woman who was meant to be married to the deceased, and the brother would take him, and now that woman would become the wife to the brother. So those are instances that wife inheritance would exist. However, the way it was turned and perpetuated to the society was that wife inheritance is a thing and it's a must and and all that. But then the facts of why wife inheritance came to existence in the first place were never shared. Okay, so cultural and social influence. So some cultural practices, they do perpetuate the existence of stereotypes, but then this only happens in a scenario where facts as to why this cultural norm exists are not shared. Cognitive efficiency. Stereotypes often arise as cognitive shortcuts or mental heuristics that simplify complex information. And then confirmation bias. Once formed, stereotypes may be reinforced by confirmation bias, where individuals tend to notice and remember information that confirms their existence beliefs while disregarding information that challenges them. Like I said, in a situation where you decide to leave out the facts. The other factor is historical and cultural context. In this scenario, you find that historical events and cultural narratives can contribute to the formation of stereotypes. Deep seated prejudices may be passed down through generations, shaping collective perceptions of certain groups. This is a scenario where you find that because our great great greats had a certain perceived notion about a particular group of people, a particular tribe, they pass it down to the next generation. The next generation passes it down to the next passes it down to the next. So it leads to these generations of people who stick to a particular belief based on what they were told by the previous generation. So hindering themselves from trying to find out the truth, hindering themselves from trying to collect actual facts and actual data so that they may actually understand why this exists and why this no longer makes sense, you know? And in all of this, we also have the things that play a role in reinforcing and shaping stereotypes. So, for example, we have culture, social norms, values, and also socialization. As individuals, we tend to socialize within our cultural context. It could be tribal, it could be race driven, it could be gender driven, or it could also be social class driven. By us socializing in these specific categories, we absorb beliefs and attitudes from family, peers, and other people in this context. And therefore, just by the way that we socialize, cultural socialization, it can contribute to the development and reinforcement of stereotypes. Media, how the media represents a particular group plays a role, mainly because the media has access is accessed sorry the media is accessed by millions of people. How does the media portray you? For instance, the media has portrayed um community b to be a calm community, a community that does not participate in conflict, a community that minds its business. Then by all means, that is how the masses are going to perceive that community to be. However, if the media, through movies, through watching the news, through um, social media, through the internet, continues to portray community B as community full of bandits, as community that cannot live in peace, as community that simply has no values, or they are keeping to their values hypocritically, then that is how the masses is going to perceive the community. So even if you are an individual and you move away from your community and you're trying to interact with people through socialization, a majority of the people are just going to perceive you as someone who is part of this image that the media portrayed. Another aspect of the media is selective exposure, or what we popularly term as clickbait. We have fallen victims of this, where the media will pick a story that is likely to pull in the masses and decide to hide the key factors. For instance, in the past, America has always portrayed themselves to be these fighters for democracy and sending in their military troops to fight for democracy and all of that and all of that. But then in this modern day and age, we are starting to see the cracks. We are starting to get information that we were not privy to. Okay, so this is just an example of selective exposure. And now that we are seeing these cracks, we are beginning to question ourselves. Especially, I want to use the example of Muammar Gaddafi, former Libyan president. He was portrayed as a terrorist. He was portrayed as an enemy to democracy, as an enemy to his people, and he was targeted and he was killed. And during that time, as Africans, we celebrated and we're like, yay, the America has brought peace to us, the America has killed an enemy and all that and all that. But then right now, when information is available, we're looking at the full news and we're like, hold up, wait, why wasn't this information available to us during that time? Okay, that is a key factor. The other thing is personal experiences, how someone, whatever experience someone has with a particular group, depending on whether it's bad or good, that experience they will transfer it to other people. If I go to Mombasa and I have, whatever experience it is that I have had with them, and maybe it's my first time going to Mombasa, and no one from where I am coming from has ever been to Mombasa, then I go back home and I tell them, oh, my experience was, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whether it was good or bad. The people who I am giving this information to, they will pick up on that and they will categorize the people of Mombasa based on what I tell them my experience was. So at the end of the day, while culture provides a foundational context through norms and socialization, influencing the initial formation of stereotypes, their media, it plays a very powerful role in shaping and reinforcing these stereotypes through either representation or selective exposure. And personal experiences, whether positive or negative, can either challenge or reinforce the existing stereotypes depending on the nature of interactions and the diversity of one's experiences. And in our bid to address stereotypes, it needs a holistic approach. It needs us to view individuals as who they are. It needs us to consider the complex interplay that all these factors have in promoting cultural awareness, critical media literacy, and positive group interactions. Just some examples of stereotypes that have existed, for instance, in gender stereotypes, is that women are emotionally unstable, that women cannot make decisions without their emotions coming to play, that at certain periods women become emotionally irrational, and that men are aggressive or unemotional, that men do not have emotions, men do not feel, men should not cry because men do not feel, that men should not speak about the things that they are going through because men should not be emotional beings. Those are some pretty damaging stereotypes that exist, and we're in this era where we are trying to unpack this. As a woman, you can be able to make decisions that are not affected by your emotions. As a man, you can wear your emotions on your sleeve and you can talk about whatever you're feeling. There's so many stereotypes that exist. For instance, that women do not belong in STEM fields. That is sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics form of professions. And that, men are ineffective caregivers, that as a man, you cannot look after your kids. As a man, if your wife is not around, you are helpless to your kids. Those are stereotypes. They exist. And we are unpacking this. We are in this era where we are unpacking all of the stereotypes that exist, nationality. For instance, there's this existing stereotypes that, a certain group of nationality or a certain race, they produce the brightest people in whatever field that they are set out to be, and that there is this particular race or this particular nationality that it's only full of dumb people who do not understand this. We also have stereotypes based on religion, where we believe that people who belong to a particular religion, they carry out certain religious practices, or people who belong to a certain denomination, they carry out certain denominational practices and beliefs. Okay? And it is something that exists, and these are things that we need to move out of. And in all of this, even in the examples that I have given, stereotypes impact personal decisions. They do. They play a role in the decisions that people make. Career choices. For example, influence on inspiration, occupational segregation, where you feel that being that you belong to this particular group, you do not belong to sit in this chair. You do not belong to sit among the board of members. I want to throw it back to this movie, Hidden Figures. I want to believe that for those of you who are listening to me, you have actually watched the movie Hidden Figures. And especially the scene with Taraji, where she could not go to the board meetings. So she had to keep on relying to this person to give her the figures, yet the figures that she would be able to use to calculate on where the spaceship or whatever would land, they kept on changing. So by her not being in those board meetings, she could not do her job well. And the reason why she could not be part of those board meetings was because, one, she was black. Two, she was a woman. So she was a black woman. And these board meetings were only meant for whites, and not just whites, but white men. Okay. In the same movie, we are able to see how she had to walk a very long distance to go to the toilet, because where she was stationed, there was no toilet for a black woman. There were toilets for women, but they were only meant for white women. So they have occupational segregation, based on the stereotype. People stereotype you in a particular way, so they feel instead of giving you that opportunity and letting you define how you are able to fit in that, they automatically segregate you. Relationships. In the example that I used of me and my ex, if he did not take that bold move of getting to know me, he would have missed out. Yes, I said that. I did. And this also affects even in communities, in the tribes that exist in our country, where you find, and again, I am simply using the most popularized communities, okay? Oh, talking about stereotypes and only using the popular communities. Please forgive me. Anyway, you may find that a Kikuyu man will not marry a Luo lady because of the tribal stereotypes that exist between the two tribes. A Kisi lady cannot be married to a Kuria man because of the tribal stereotypes that exists. So at the end of the day, you meet this gorgeous woman, you love this woman, or you meet this gorgeous man and you love this man and he is the full package. But that one factor that he belongs to this particular group, and you think back and you think of your people and the beliefs that they hold against this particular group, and you're like, there is no need for me to put you through this hell, so I will just not continue with this. Academic performance stereotypes based on intelligence or academic activities or academic abilities based on factors like race. We have social interaction or even self perception of people that affect how people view things. And how do we break these stereotypes? How are we breaking them? It is important to break stereotypes because, one, it helps to promote equality. That individual biasness, that discrimination or prejudice that existed, it helps to break it and provide equality. Stereotypes can perpetuate inequality by reinforcing biased views about certain groups. Challenging stereotypes is a step towards creating a more equal and just society. When you sit down with your friends from the different tribes and you have this conversation about these stereotypes or these beliefs that you had about them, and they actually give you a clear-cut explanation, you no longer see them as people from a different tribe, but you see them as one of you. Individual empowerment. Stereotypes can limit individual beliefs, okay, by imposing rigid expectations. Like I said, men are not supposed to cry. They're not supposed to be emotional beings. Women cannot make decisions. Once you break this stereotype that has put you in this box, you are able to empower yourself. You empower yourself individually. And we are in our awakening era. Hello? We are in our awakening era. Let's awaken. It helps to foster diversity and inclusion. It enhances understanding. It improves personal relationships. So these are some of the things that just breaking the stereotypes is able to reinforce, okay? Reduces discrimination creating positive role models. So breaking stereotypes is essential for building a more inclusive, equitable, and understanding society. It involves challenging preconceived notion, embracing diversity, and promoting a culture that values individuals for their unique qualities rather than conforming to biased expectations. So we have seen just how nice breaking stereotypes can be. So how do we go about to break these stereotypes? Education and awareness. Let's get educated about the dangers of stereotypes, about the negative effects that having stereotypes brings about. And because once we are educated about this, we are able to move past this. Encourage critical thinking. Question the assumptions that exist about a particular group. Ask questions, because when you ask questions and you're given answers, you're able to read between the lines and you're able to even look at the answers more critically and question the answers more. And this leads to the breaking of stereotypes. Promote positive role models, especially when it comes to stereotypes that are perpetuated by gender, stereotypes that are brought about due to belonging to certain tribal groups. Let's look at the positive role models, the people who have come out of that matrix, for lack of a better word. Let's look at those individuals and let's shine a light on these individuals and show that no, this is not the norm. We have person B, we have person A, and they belong to this group and they belong to this ethnic group and they belong to this class, but they are different. And if this one person exists, how many of them exist? How many of them exist who are just as different as this one person has shown us to be? Facilitate interpersonal connections. Challenge biased language behavior. Promote equal opportunities and encourage individuality. These are some of the things that we can do to break the existence of stereotypes. And as I come to the end of this episode, and I am looking at my timer and it's 44 minutes and 24 seconds right now. Oh, this is a super long episode. I usually love my episodes being 30 seconds, and this is making it longer. As I come to the conclusion of this episode, I want to reinforce the dangers of stereotypes. They promote discrimination, they promote prejudice, they promote putting someone in a box, they promote inequality, and these are the things that we're moving out of. We are no longer our greats who had limited information, who had limited resources in terms of where they can get knowledge. We are in an era where we have these resources, where we can gain this information. It is time. The time is not 5 hours from now. The time is not 3 hours from now. It is time for us to break this and be the best that we can, especially as Africans. A lot is setting us back because of the stereotypes that exist. And when you take a sit back and you have a closer look at the stereotypes that exist, you realize that they are creating more divisions than equality. And then you realize that it's time for us to break these stereotypes. It's time for us to mesh together as one and rise up for the betterment of the people who are coming behind us, or the people who are coming after us. And with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to leave your thoughts on the episode. How do you feel about it? What do you think I should have addressed that I didn't? What are you glad that I talked about? Thank you for tuning in. That's it for this episode of Cut the Monologue. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms at Cut the Monologue. That is Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And also follow us on all streaming platforms and turn your notifications on to always get notified whenever we drop an episode. Until the next episode, goodbye for now.